We're back on Morning Scramble with our co-host, DJ Phone. Still lovely to have you with us, DJ. Tara Jackson, president of Arizona Town Hall. What is it? What is a town hall? I mean, I think of this as a small town thing where all the citizens get together and they talk about things for their town. Something like that?
In some ways, it's inspired from that. We've been around for over 50 years, and what we do is hold community discussions around difficult topics, trying to solve those topics.
Nice. One coming up today.
One coming up here today in Prescott to talk about Arizona's vulnerable populations.
Wow. And what are vulnerable populations? I'm thinking when you're in water, you know, up to your steering wheel, you're vulnerable. But
well, this I understand is a little bit more in depth regarding your vulnerability to perhaps being in financial crisis, being unable to take care of your family, and that's what your discussion is going to be about at noon today, right, at Embry-Riddle?
That's right, at noon today at Embry-Riddle, and if you haven't signed up for it, you can still show up, as long as you don't want lunch or you bring your own lunch, because we'd love to have even more of the community there. But the term vulnerable populations for us was really interesting to define. We decided to take it on for purposes of these programs as those people who are on the edge of falling into social services or the safety net. So how can we keep people who are one crisis away from needing the social services?
You know, and I've heard that you know, you think, oh, you're safe, everything's good, but what is the percentage? A lot of people, surprisingly, are on that margin.
A huge percentage, depending on how you define it. I would guess that every one of your audience members knows many people who are one crisis or one paycheck away from needing that kind of social service support. So our goal in these meetings is, if that happens to you, how can we create systems so that people are able to sustain that life crisis? What can we do?
And who are you talking with? I mean, obviously, if you're having a conversation, you want to talk to people that are going to make a difference with these vulnerable populations. At a town hall, who comes? Who are you targeting, Tara?
Well, we have a lot of what you would call different kinds of town halls. We have a statewide gathering that was 3.5 days, and that was a collection of diverse leaders from around the state, rural, urban, Phoenix, and also students. In Prescott, just from the people that we know are coming today, it is also a combination of community leaders, education leaders, business leaders, those who are in the social services, government, a combination of people that can work together, hopefully, to solve this issue.
Well, Tara, do you find, given the fact we just came through the primary season with the election coming up in November, do you find that sometimes politicians are a little bit too harsh on people who are on that edge? What I'm saying is that a lot of times you'll hear politicians saying, you know, we're all about self-sufficiency and self-responsibility and stuff like this. And I would think the majority of people who are self-sufficient and who are very, very responsible working people are still on that edge where one job loss, even a missed paycheck, can cause disaster.
Well, in fact, I would say most people in Arizona, and especially in Prescott, are one paycheck away. So the question is trying to understand the situation, and sometimes those who have a nice savings account to weather a crisis don't fully understand how to make a difference in those lives. But I think what they do understand, what they would understand, is that none of us want to pay more taxes for greater social services. So if we can prevent people from falling off of that abyss into social services, we'll all be better off. Most of all, those people themselves who would rather be independent when a crisis comes along.
What do you expect to come out of the town hall in terms of building a safety net? How do you do something like that?
Well, there were a lot of wonderful ideas that came out of the statewide gathering back in April. We have a report that summarizes those that everyone today, when they talk about ideas, will be looking at. There are ideas that don't cost any money, that just help people to weather that crisis. So at today's program, and at the programs around the state, this is the first of many, our goal is to engage the community in how to solve its own problems around these issues, and to give them some of the great ideas that came out of the discussion for 3.5 days at the statewide town hall.
Well, this is interesting. It's prevention. It sounds like it's focusing on prevention rather than dealing with. We've got a lot of organizations here who deal with folks who have toppled over the edge, you know, Open Door and Salvation Army and, you know, just all kinds who deal with them after but, you know, prevention is one thing. What kinds of things make people vulnerable that cause them to go over into the abyss of, I guess, problems?
There are so many, but I'm going to touch on, to answer your question, a few where there were some specific answers to reduce that vulnerability. One is, let's say you lose your job and you have no savings. Now suddenly you have no way of paying your mortgage or your rent and you're out on the streets. One of the key differences in whether you can weather that crisis is if you have a savings account. When you control for the same amount of income and everything else in a family, if they have a savings account, they can weather the crisis. Mm-hmm. So policies that encourage or support savings, including in children, have a huge impact on making the vulnerable less vulnerable. Then there are things like access to health care or preventative health care. One health care crisis that could have been prevented can throw an entire family into crisis. Quality education is the #1 investment that will keep someone in a life crisis from being able to, or will allow them to weather that crisis. So really looking at education, especially early education, as an investment in creating a stronger, more resilient population. Those are all ways to weather that crisis.
Tara, on the point of early education, and I like the fact your report really stresses the importance of education with the family. Do you have any education or any kind of references in the education process to teaching children the importance of not having children of their own until they're able to support them? The reason I bring this up is because in some of the urban centers around the country, the cycle of poverty is perpetuated by what they call children having children. Is that part of the education process?
That particular issue wasn't addressed with that kind of specificity. Generally speaking, allowing children, and especially in high school, to have a better understanding, more financial literacy. So, for example, what it costs to have a child. I know, my husband and I have 5. Wow, what it costs. Yeah. And what it means, more importantly, to get a higher education degree. What that can do for you in your lifetime. So if you know those things in high school, and sometimes if your parents don't know that, you won't learn that. But that can have a huge impact in avoiding some of those issues.
Sure. Well, and now we have a huge population of baby boomers as well. So you kind of miss, you know, we've missed that part perhaps, but now there's also education for seniors in terms of providing for whatever future they have in terms of long-term care. I guess there's other aspects of vulnerability too with older people as well.
Absolutely, and our growing elderly population, I guess many of us are growing older, right, every day.
We'll consider the alternative.
That's right, is absolutely one of the issues that we need to address on a statewide and local basis, how to prepare for that.
Absolutely. Well, coming up today at noon, it is the Arizona Town Hall coming to Embry-Riddle. Let's see, so again, people can come. There's lunch for those who have already registered and that kind of thing, but those other people can still come, just not have lunch. Noon to 1:30.
Noon to 1:30 at Embry-Riddle, and absolutely it's about community dialogue. We welcome everyone.
Because you want all kinds of people to come, certainly even people who are vulnerable. People who
especially those who are vulnerable, because they have the most information on how to solve the problem.
Yeah, they're there, they're living it.
Yes.
Tara Jackson, President of Arizona Town Hall, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.